Good morning, good morning. Welcome to another video on the Luderco Arms channel. Today we're going to be working on my daughter's Highlander. This is a 2018 Toyota Highlander. And she's fixing to go off to college here in a few short weeks. And so I figured that rather than worry about it, I'm going to go ahead and put new brake pads front and rear. So this video will be the front, and then we'll turn it around and make a second video with the rear. I bought the pads off Rock Auto, and I can't remember which one's front and which one's rear. Normally in the past you would have picked the bigger ones to go on the front, but these new cars, I don't know. So we'll see. We'll get to that. I'll give you the part number, especially once I know that they're the right pads, because now that goes. But step one is, as always, we're going to pop the hood and loosen the cap on the brake fluid reservoir. And that's because when we squeeze the piston in on the caliper, it's going to push brake fluid back up in here. And this is the part you want to really pay attention to, because if you've taken your car to a 5-minute oil change or a Jiffy Lube, someplace like that, and your brake, so what happens is your brake pads wear down, the level in this falls. And that's because as your pads wear down, your piston moves farther out in the caliper. And as long as it's above the minimum right here, you don't need to add fluid to it. You don't need to fill it up to the max. Now see, right now this thing's sitting on the max. Now we bought this car from my mother-in-law, and she took it to a place to get the oil changed every time, and of course they topped off the brake fluid. So when we go to start squeezing that caliper in, we need to keep an eye and make sure we don't overflow this. We may need to suck some out of there. We'll see when we get there. But the first step is going to be to jack up one corner and pull the tire. So now my jack is too big to fit under the A-arm, so I'm having to jack it up from the frame rail there where the A-arm bolts on, so my tire's dropping as I'm jacking it up. But once you got it off of the ground, like so, then you need 21mm socket. Now, if you don't have an impact wrench, loosen your lug nuts before you jack it up. All right, let me get set up for the next part, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now that we've got the wheel off, we can see that we have the caliper here and the caliper bracket, and you got your sliding points, and then you got two bolts you're going to have to take out, one here and one down here. They take a 14mm wrench. When you go to turn this, if it turns this inside nut right here, then you'll have to put a wrench on that to hold it. Because basically what this is a bolt that goes through the caliper and into the slider. I'll show you all that once we get it apart. But for now, the other thing too is these brake pads that I'm fixing to replace, they're not bad. They've actually got some more miles left on them, but like I said, I'm doing this because she's going to be up at college and not close to home, and I just don't want to I'd rather have it all be new right this minute. So that being said, those are kind of tight. Let me get a different tool. Okay, so this top bolt was super tight, and they have thread locker on them, so it's going to be a fight to get them out of there. What I ended up having to do is make a tool for this back nut. The problem with this right here is that it's not wide enough for any standard wrench. Snap-on won't fit it, a regular snap-on wrench won't fit it, regular Craftsman wrench won't fit it, Proto Professional won't fit it. I haven't found one yet. I have a set of thin wrenches, but unfortunately it only goes down to 20 millimeter, and this is a 17. But I took one of my old 17 millimeter wrenches out of my spare wrenches box. So every time I get a new set of wrenches, and I have ones that I'm retiring, I put them in that box, and that way when I need to make a tool like this, now I got one that will hold that while I put the impact wrench on it, because that was the only way I could get this loose. So we'll get this bottom one out. You don't want to spin this around and bust that boot up. There we go. And there's not a lot of space in here to put a longer ratchet on it. And I could have just beat on my wrench with a hammer, which I do a lot, but that's a nice snap-on wrench, and I really didn't want to do that. So now we got those two bolts out. Now what I like to do is come in one of these holes with a screwdriver, get the screwdriver, and where I'm putting this is in here, inside. You don't want to pry against the outside of this and scratch it up unless you're putting new rotors on. But I'm gonna get in the inside of that, and I'm just gonna pull over a little bit. Now all that's doing is taking is pushing that caliper piston back in enough where this is loose, where we can get it off. So now we should be able to just pull this away, and then you can use whatever you've got. I've got this fancy little hook here, and hang that back out of the way so that it's out of your way and you can work on this down here. Now you can see these pads aren't bad. If she was just staying at home, I'd probably run them a little longer, but because she's not, she's going off to Columbia to go to school. Anytime you pull these pads off, you want to pay attention to how all this little hardware is on here, because you're gonna have to put it back, put the new ones on. So these look like they are just drilled into the top of the pads. Now my new pads do come with these, and we'll be putting those on, and then we just want to ease these back out of here. And so there's one, top one, or outside I should say, and there's the inside, just like that. Take note of where your little squeal indicators are so that you can put them on the new ones. And then we've got these little metal pieces in here that we're going to have to replace. So let me get all the stuff for that, and I'll be right back. Okay. Now normally I would knock all this out quick, and as a matter of fact, once I get done with this side and I go to the other side, I'll run straight through it without stopping and explaining. But I know some of y'all have never done a brake job before, and this may be your first car or what have you, so I'm going to go through it nice and slow. So inside your new brakes, and like I said, these are Ray Bestos Element 2s, and the part number is EHT13224H. You can see right there. Hopefully that's coming through. And inside there you'll have your 4 brake pads. You'll have these little clips like this that go on to make it squeal when they get low. You'll have the little wire spring clips that we took off already, and then you'll have all these little sheet metal pieces. And if you look, I've got them separated. There's two different clips. So you got one with the spring part on one side and one with the spring part on the other, and that's important. There's two different kinds. So don't go in here and just start knocking all your pieces off unless you know where they go, right? So if you're new to this, the easiest way to do it, to keep track of everything, is one piece at a time. So we'll start here. Take your screwdriver, pull that out of there, set it down, take a little wire brush. Now you don't have to polish this to make it where you could eat off of it or anything like that, but just clean out where that goes. Take a little brake cleaner, clean it off. Then we're going to take our little metal clip and match it up to the one that looks like it, like so, just like that. Then we can come back over here, and these basically just are held in by spring tension, just like that. And then we'll do the same for the upper one. Pull it off, wire brush, get all the crud out, the big crud knocked off. Like I said, you're not trying to make it clean enough to eat off of. You just want to get that. Sorry, I don't want that on my camera. Okay. And then your top one, if you haven't guessed it already, is going to match up to the other clips that you have. And you'll put that back in, just like so. And then you're going to do the exact same thing on the back side. And there, right here, and right here. So we'll do the same thing. Then once I get done with that, what I usually will do is kind of douche off that whole area, so that when we put our new pads on there, we're not putting them up on any fingerprints or anything you might have gotten on there. All right, so now we're ready for pads. And so we'll match a pad up. We want to make sure that they're the same. As you can see, this is the pad from the back side, and then we need to put a clip on it, a noise maker clip. So we'll pop out. Let me get this where I'll be able to show you. Okay, so you just take this clip, and you can see it's got an end there that fits over that, and it's kind of a pain in the behind to get on there. There we go, just like that. So now we can put this one back in its spot, and once I get to the front side, you'll be able to see better what it is I'm doing right here with getting it in these spring clips. It's kind of hard to do this back side where y'all can see it. Okay, and then the front side, find one that matches up with it. And I think these pads may all be the same. It's just depending on which side of it that your little spring clip's going to go on. But there we go. And then you come over here, and so what you're doing is taking this nub end on each end of it and getting it in here, and it'll sit in there, and that spring, this spring right here, holds tension on it. So you got to get it kind of started in there and just get it, both ends of it in. There we go, just like that. Always make sure you put the pad to the rotor, not the metal part. Everybody laughs about that, but it happens all the time. So now that we've got that in there, we'll move this light over here so I can see. And you'll notice that on these pads there's a hole there and there and there and there, and that is where our two spring clips that we took off. Now these are the new ones, obviously. So what you got to do here is stick it in the one hole and then bend it so that it's springy, and get it in the other hole like that and like that, just like that. So now we've got everything put on there. We've got to collapse our piston in our caliper, our pistons, and get ready to put that back in. So let me go get my tool for that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now we're ready to press these caliper pistons back in. Now, this one's got a double piston, so you have to push both pistons in at the same time. If you try to push one in, you're just going to push the other out. So don't do that. You can do this a couple of different ways. The way we did it for years and years and years and years, before I had any other choice or special tool, was with a C-clamp. And so what you would do is take your old pad and lay it on there and put your C-clamp around it like so, and then tighten that down to push both pistons in at the same time. So that's the setup. Or I've got this tool that I just bought. Get this set up here, and we can put it in there, and since there's space, we'll go ahead and stick an old pad in there just so we don't have to crank it as far. And this tool pushes both pistons at the same time. And while I'm doing this, I'm also looking up here to make sure we're not about to overflow the brake fluid. And I'm kind of concerned about that because I know they've been adding brake fluid to this thing instead of leaving it alone. But you just push those pistons back in like so. And you want to be careful your boots aren't getting pinched or cut. but you'll know it when you bottom out, and then you can go the opposite direction and pull your tool back out. And I like to spin it back down so it's ready for the next go. Alright, so we've got our pistons pushed back in, our boots are in good shape. There's one other thing we need to do before we put this back on, and that is we need to make sure that these slide pins slide. And they got a good bit of vacuum on them here. Yep. There we go. So they'll get a vacuum on them that will keep you from getting it to move. But this is what should be happening here. See that right there? So that's good. Somehow I have misplaced, there it is, oh, this son of a bitch here. Yeah, now see that? That is this bottom slide pin here. So see how this top one moves in and out nice and smooth like it should? So this bottom one was all rusted up in there, so we need to clean that up and re-grease it. So let me go clean this up and I'll be right back. So now you can see I've cleaned that all up, and there's a little bushing on the end, so when you're cleaning this up you don't want to mess that bushing up. You just want to clean all that rust and dried up gunk grease off of it. And then this is a very, very old can of disc brake caliper lube, and you need to take this and put you a nice coat on this thing. Slick it on up and put it back. In its hole. And you might have to work it a little bit to get it down in there, because this thing has got quite a, there we go. Now it's in there and it moves. So that's what we needed. Now we got to get the boot back on it, which can be problematic at times. There we go. So we got our boot on there, and she moves in and out just like she's supposed to. That's important, because as your brakes wear down, if that doesn't move, you're going to start wearing one side more than the other. Alright, so now that we've got all that taken care of, we can get our caliper back on here. and you get it, you'll have to push those in just like that. Put our little bolts back in. And here is where your backup wrench is going to come in, because since we cleaned and greased those slide pins, they're now going to try to spin on us when we go to tighten these bolts down. See, that whole thing will spin, so we want to hold that so we can tighten our caliper bolt down. Put a little German torque on there, good and tight, and get our wrench on this bottom one, and okay. So now those are all back on there. We got one other thing to do though. You come up here and check. You can see that the level of our brake fluid came up some, and we don't want to leave it that way. There's probably enough room in there so I can do the other side, and we're going to go ahead and try it. Now when you press the brake pedal the first time, it's going to go to the floor. You want to do it slowly. It's going to push those pistons out, and get everything seated. But before we do all that, we still got to do the other side. So I'm going to get the wheel put back on and move to the other side. And when I get to the other side, we'll go through the whole thing again, except we'll do it a lot faster and with a lot less talking. So I'll bring you back for that. Alright, now we'll get this passenger side knocked on out. It's starting to get hot outside. Alright, there we go. Both sides done. Let me get this wheel back on and I'll be right back. All right, let me show y'all this. This is exactly what I was afraid of with this. So when I was compressing that second caliper, I was looking at it from this side. I didn't notice it must have been at the very end of compressing it, this thing started back overflowing. So that right there is what I'm talking about. That's why you don't add brake fluid unless it's down to the down to the minimum. If it's between that and the max, do not put brake fluid in it. And if you take your car to some place to get the oil changed, tell them do not add brake fluid, because that right there just makes a mess. Now I got to go in here and clean all that mess up and get it off of there, because brake fluid will rust any metal it comes in contact. It'll take the paint off of metal. It's terrible. All right, so now that we have done our front brakes, we're going to come in here and we're going to ease the pedal down and let it come back up. Now you don't want to slam it down, you know, you don't want to get crazy with it. But what we're doing is looking for a hard pedal. So once that pedal gets hard, that means all those calipers have expanded out and you're good to go. So now we can, key not detected. Oh, okay. Yeah, the fob's on the other counter. So now our brake fluid has gone down some, but we're going to have to suck brake fluid out of here before I can even do the backside. But the backside, that'll be on another video. So that's it. I'm going to get that cleaned up and get the key fob. And basically what I do once I've done an axle brakes and I've done, you know, the brake pedal until I get a good hard pedal where everything's expanded out, is I'll take it out on the road, give it a couple of hard brakes, make sure she's not pulling to one side or the other, and get everything settled down. And then I'm going to do the back axle, and I'm going to the same way. It'll be in a separate video. Once those two axles are done, then is when you got all new brake pads. You go here and you can fill this to the max line, and then as your brake pads wear and it falls, it shouldn't fall below the min line, and you should never have to add brake fluid. That's just an awful, they are not doing you a favor when they top off your brake fluid. That's terrible, terrible idea. So there's that. And that is putting the front brakes on the old 2018 Toyota Highlander. Like I said, I'm going to get that cleaned up and get these brakes centered in, and then flip it around and make another video on the back brakes. So we'll see you in the next video. Appreciate y'all watching, and y'all have a good one.